Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Laura Prada from the Telesur studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The Vice President of Ecuador, María Alejandra Vicuña, has been accused by a former advisor of asking for financial contribution during her time as a congresswoman. Ángel Sagbay made allegations in an interview with local TV. About this, Vicuña offered a press conference where she dismissed the accusations.
Here have evidence. Ecuadorians have to know that this is not coincidence. Since September, Mr. Sagbay has threatened to forge this statement if we don't meet the demand for charge, particularly as the governor of the Morona Santiago province, as provincial director of FtS. But as we didn't concede to this blackmail, pressure, or extortion, because we are committed to transparency, today the standards are made public.
To know more information about this press conference, we go to Ecuador to our correspondent, Denise Herrera.
According to the Vice President, María Alejandra Vicuña, in a press conference, she rejected this accusation and also accused of this accusation to Andrés Páez, and also said that she will start an investigation against this accusation. Also, the President of Ecuador, Lenin Moreno, in his public Twitter account, said that the justice will find the responsibles for this accusation. It's all the information we have for now. Back to you at the studios.
Moving on to Argentina, where the Supreme Court has rejected an appeal by the indigenous leader Milagros Sala against her detention. Sala has been in prison or under house arrest for most of the last 2 years in connection with several charges. This appeal rejected to the so-called X case where she was accused of throwing eggs at the house of Gerardo Morales, the governor of Jujuy province. She said she wasn't even present that day and the cases against her are political persecution. Still in Argentina, where the country is busy preparing for the G20 summit, which is mere days away. The government is deploying thousands of security personnel and restricting public transportation in Buenos Aires. Buses, subways, trains, and even air transportation services will operate on a restricted schedule between Thursdays and Sunday. Over 13,000 police, Navy, and airport security personnel will patrol the capital. In addition, the U.S. and other countries are also expected to help with security for the global conference. We make contact with our correspondent Edgardo Esteban for more details.
An intense week of activity continues. There are a number of demonstrations planned, including at the Atlanta Stadium and a gathering on Thursday at the People's Summit outside Congress. There are going to be tents, debates, forums, and open talks marking the rejection of the G20 leaders' presence. More than 6,000 attendees, including international delegations and journalists, are about to arrive, and there's severe controls in place for activists participating in the counter-summit. There are a lot of expectations for what is going to happen in the city, because whilst traffic is normal now, we're in a zone which will soon have prohibited access. There are going to be 22,000 policemen. If you recall the Malvinas War, there were 15,000 soldiers active. For this 48-hour summit, there will be more than 20,000 members of security forces in 3 zones. It's going to be impossible to get around. Airports will be closed, public services such as trains and buses are going to be interrupted, roads will be closed, the port of Buenos Aires will be closed as well. Argentina is going to be isolated because of President Macri's government's security decision. Aircraft carriers have been brought in from the US as well as planes from other countries. Israel has helped with border control. Despite warnings and repressive operations, the counter-summit is still being held. And on Friday, a big demonstration called by social organizations, trade unions, and all kinds of diversity movements is going to take place in rejection of Macri's policies and the G20. It will also stand against the accord signed between the IMF and Argentina.
Thank you, Edgardo. Finally, the second leg of the Copa Libertadores final between River Plate and Boca Juniors will be played outside Argentina in the first week of December. The final was initially only delayed until Sunday after River Plate supporters attacked the Boca Juniors team bus before being postponed. At least 6 players were injured and some were affected by tear gas and pepper spray used by the police to disperse the River fans. A statement from the South American football governing body, CONMEBOL, said a venue would be decided as soon as possible.
No, I'm not going to give my opinion because we have no intention of playing another final. The Discipline and Sanctions Court is now the body which has to decide and which has to study the case and apply a punishment whether it's right or not. After we read the verdict, if the answer is negative, we will appeal to CONMEBOL.
Members of the Brazilian Socialist Party are speaking out against the incoming government of Jair Bolsonaro and its recent comments against the Cuban doctors who were working in the country.
Members of the PSB in the country's lower house have made President-elect Jair Bolsonaro responsible for what is sure to be a tragedy for Brazilians once all Cuban doctors have left the country.
The lack of doctors in Brazil is now the responsibility of the president-elect. He's at fault for the Cuban doctors leaving. He is responsible for the thousands who will be left with no access to medical attention.
In a letter supporting the Cuban government's decision to pull out these doctors, members of the PSB also lamented the various positions of the incoming government.
The Cuban government made the right choice. These people came to help Brazil. They helped those less fortunate, those in rural areas, and then they were humiliated and attacked during Bolsonaro's campaign. The response by the Cuban government shows they will defend their dignity.
Over 28 million Brazilians were cared for by the Cuban doctors, who worked in the most vulnerable areas of the country, regions with low rates of human development.
The Cuban doctors took care of people. They felt people's pain and tried to find ways of resolving it. Brazilians felt this and valued the doctors' care. Brazilian doctors are often more concerned with money and their own living conditions, because medicine is a field for those with money.
Out of the 16,000 health experts who formed part of the More Doctors program, over 8,000 were Cuban.
After the insulting comments made by President-elect Jair Bolsonaro drove the Cuban doctors out of Brazil, many have come to their defense. Current and former students of Cuban medical schools highlight how thousands of health professionals graduate every year in Cuba, with many students coming from abroad. Let's find out on this story.
About 100 kilometers from Havana lies the city of Matanzas, where one of the country's 25 medical universities is located. Medical students participate in local healthcare from the first year of their studies.
We need to have a community-based approach if we want to achieve sustainable development goals. It is only through communities that quality of life can be improved, especially with healthcare, as it is stated in the World Health Organization guidelines.
The university has students hailing from over 40 countries. Brazilian Mauricio Brito studies here and says the criticism of Brazil's president-elect Jair Bolsonaro about the professionalism of Cuban doctors is completely unfounded.
I disagree with his criticism about the professional abilities of Cuban doctors. The training is very good here. We study preventive medicine and have practical classes from the very first year.
This is the same academic and practical training that the thousands of doctors who are being recalled by the Cuban government from Brazil have received.
It's true that the returning doctors are now more than just doctors. They gain incredible experiences, not just medical, but human experiences that made them much more than just doctors. They went to remote places that never had access to healthcare before.
In Cuba, over 45,000 doctors from 115 countries have been trained in the medical field. Cuba also offers internationally renowned training for more than 60 different medical specialities.
Like this, we've come to a first break hearing from the South. Stay with us. And we are back. Let's check some important information about the program that seeks to support Venezuelans who have been victims of violence, exploitation, and xenophobia in some countries of the region. From the 28th of August until the 27th of November, 10,000 Venezuelans have returned to their country thanks to the plan Back to the Homeland. 6,663 of them have returned from Brazil, the country with the largest numbers of requests. This nation is followed by Peru with 1,302 Venezuelans, while Ecuador has 1,111 Venezuelan citizens. Another 475 citizens living in Colombia were reported as well. In the Dominican Republic, 186 and 171 in Argentina, 91 in Chile, and only 1 in Panama. Also in Venezuela, the president of the Supreme Popular Assembly of People's Republic of Korea, Kim Jong-nam, met with President Nicolás Maduro as part of his official visit to the South American nation. The North Korean representative was also received by the Venezuelan foreign minister to continue the work agenda they already had. Kim Jong-nam honored the Libertador Simón Bolívar along with the delegation and the president of the National Assembly Constituent, Diosdado Cabello, who emphasized the importance of the visit. A new migrant caravan is ready to depart from El Salvador towards the United States. This time, hundreds of Central American migrants are taken to social media for answers, whilst also sharing their fears and concerns on these same platforms.
I've been hearing about these caravans for quite some time. I've heard that 2 have left already. This one will be the 3rd. Another one is expected to leave later. Who knows how many more?
We are preparing ourselves because our country is in chaos. We are moving on enthusiastically, hoping we all arrive to the U.S.
During a press conference in Tijuana, the members of the migrant caravan made a series of demands to the Mexican and the U.S. governments.
We request of President Donald Trump to accelerate the process of asylum in the United States because everyone has the right to ask for political asylum, as my colleagues said, that a commission is formed by the new government of Mexico that comes to negotiate a presidential solution for those who want to stay here.
Today is when countries are needed to come to the rescue of all the migrants. We are suffering. We are not suffering because we want to. We need to bring our families forward. And what happened on Sunday was a peaceful march. Many people have their families back in Honduras, starving, and went out to work to feed them.
Now to Costa Rica, where proposed tax reform continues to move towards approval despite the ongoing national strike that has lasted for over 2 months. Our correspondent in San Jose, Fernando Francia, will bring us more details.
Costa Rica is still debating tax reform and how to apply legal frameworks to best deal with the fiscal crisis in the country. The Legislative Assembly is debating the reforms, but they're still waiting for all the reports they need to reach a decision. For 78 days, there have been national strikes against tax reform. Several educational institutions are demanding better treatment ever since the Education Ministry announced new austerity measures. For example, there are 2,400 teachers from schools across the country facing redundancies because they're not part of next year's educational plan.
Thank you, Fernando. Now to the Caribbean, where the Scotia Bank has confirmed it's set to sell its banks in 9 Caribbean countries as it downsizes its international markets. Their plan is to sell the Caribbean banks to the Trinidad and Tobago-based Republic Financial Holdings Limited. Larger markets in Latin America are still on the table, as Scotiabank reported that its international profits have been greater than its Canadian business over the past year. Telesur has held meetings in several Caribbean countries to discuss strengthening its presence in the region. In Antigua and Barbuda, the channel's president, Patricia Villegas, met the Prime Minister Gaston Brown to talk about expanding both production capacity and distribution. The Prime Minister said Telesur had an important job to do, connecting the English-speaking Caribbean with Latin America.
Very important, and I certainly want to commend Telesur for establishing a branch here in Antigua and Barbuda, which will help to bring the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and, generally speaking, Latin America closer to the Caribbean so that we can exchange news items and that the people within the region will have information. Those in South America and beyond will have information from the Caribbean and similarly would understand what is happening in your part of the world. In essence, I think it is helping to integrate individuals in this hemisphere, and it is an initiative that my government welcomes, and we will support the initiative.
Advocates will gather in Haiti on Wednesday for a high-level meeting on HIV/AIDS. Eleanor Frederick of Antigua and Barbuda's HIV/AIDS network will deliver the future address on the topic of HIV in the Caribbean. According to the United Nations Population Fund, the Caribbean has the highest incident rate of reported AIDS cases in the Americas. Moment to take a second break here from the south. Stay with us. And we are back. The Simferopol court issued 2-month arrest for 12 of the 14 members of the Ukrainian military vessel. Crew members were detained for illegally crossing the Russian border and organizing a provocation in the Kerch Strait. They claimed to carry out orders from superiors. According to the Ukrainian authorities, their ship have the right to navigate the area in accordance with international law, but Russia denied this statement. Dozens of demonstrators came together on Monday in the center of the Tunisian capital to protest against the visit of Saudi Arabian Prince Mohammed bin Salman, allegedly responsible for the assassination of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The Saudi heir prince arrived in Tunisia this Tuesday to meet President Benji Caid Essebsi. The meeting was attended by hundreds of people to show their rejection to the visit of the Saudi heir. They sang "The murderer is not welcome in Tunisia" and "Shame of the ruler of Tunisia" for having received bin Salman. Since the Arab Spring uprising of 2011, which toppled the entrenched rulers in the region and provoked agitation, Tunisia has experienced a major political evolution. A United States federal judge has failed to rule on whether charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange should be made public. Free Press Advocates wants the judge to reveal the charges that Assange faces. However, prosecutors are arguing that the public has no right to know the charges until an arrest is made.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that the Reporters Committee in particular is particularly interested in this matter is because of the possibility, or at least a suggestion that's been made, that the criminal charges against Mr. Assange are predicated on his publication of information, which is obviously something the news media does quite a bit. We also think there's just a general public interest in this case, not just in understanding, understanding how the court functions, but also understanding what happened in this particular matter, which has really captured public attention. So I think the public interest certainly weighs in favor of disclosure. We'll have to see, I think, how the court ultimately comes out.
The Saudi Crown Prince is on a tour of Arab states for the first time since the killing of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Let's look at that and more stories from around the world.
Protests have erupted in Tunisia against the arrival of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The prince's scheduled arrival is part of a tour of Arab states. He departed from Egypt after visiting Bahrain and the UAE. However, Tunisians have made it clear that he's not welcome. Demonstrators were seen chanting, "Murder is not welcome in Tunisia and shame on Tunisia's rulers." Khashoggi was last seen going into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, in October after much speculation the Saudis finally admitted to killing him and dismembering his body. 11 people have been charged. The CIA concluded that the Crown Prince was involved in his murder. Increasing humanitarian problems in Afghanistan are causing parents to sell their children into marriage to pay off debt or buy food. According to the UN Children's Agency, 161 children aged between 1 month and 16 years old were sold over a 4-month period, 6 of whom were boys. Alison Parker, UNICEF spokeswoman, says there's an increase in child forced labour as well.
So parents actually get into debt, and they hope that with maybe rain coming soon, they would be able to pay off the debt and have their livelihoods and their, to be able to provide for their family. But unfortunately, the drought continued to drag on, and they could not pay this debt. So unfortunately, children are now becoming the collateral.
Firefighters in the French city of Lyon are protesting to demand higher salaries amid the continued Yellow Vest protests. Police were on scene as firefighters blocked the streets and marched towards Belleville Square with torches and banners. The strike comes just a few days before the Festival of Light that attracts thousands of visitors.
Like this, we've come to the end of this news brief. This and many other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurenglish.net, where you can find more news, opinion articles, and of course, the special interviews. Make sure to also follow us on Facebook and Instagram as Telesur English. Thank you for watching.